Is Matthew Manos here? I think
He
he is.
is. Hey there. How's it going?
Hi, Matthew. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. And it's great to see Doug. We actually work together
I
in our
was
other life.
wondering.
Yeah.
I, I was wondering because I thought, for a moment that we were all three going to be talking with each other, but I'm really excited that we get, maybe we'll all stay on at the end and and get to jam together. But Matthew, you're the founder of Very Nice. I love that, Very Nice, and a design strategy consultancy that gives away half of your work to nonprofits serving clients including Apple, Google, UNICEF, and NASA. And you're also an associate dean at the academy that you were just talking about. You lead programs challenging students to design solutions for complex social issues. You are a global lecturer and author on design and social innovation. You also created Apple Education, bravo, training across 36 countries, co-designed the Iovine Young Curriculum, and you've also been named by Huffington Post as one of 7 millennials changing the world. My goodness. So Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. And I can't wait to just dive in. So, you're going to be talking about the most innovative ideas that often spring from seemingly impossible connections. So, tell us a little, especially given all of your experience and what your background. Um, I want to hear about this, and then I also have a lot more questions about the model that you have for
Yeah.
your design
That
strategy
sounds
consulting.
great. And I have some slides that I can jump into, or we could keep it more
Okay.
conversational. Up to you.
Well, Matthew, it's up to you. Why don't we see your slides and let's talk along the way? How about that?
Perfect. That sounds great. Let me get those up as well. So, one of the things I really wanted to talk about today, to your point, Ani, around ideas and innovations being able to come from these really strange connections out there, is where ideas come from in the first place. This is something I've been particularly passionate about for many years, but actually in this AI era, it's something that I feel is now even more critical or urgent for us all to own as humanity. I think the arts, crafts, and ideas are what we really have left to be able to own and to uh, be able to pour all of our unique creative spirits into as well. And I've thought a lot around where ideas ultimately come from. And the best way I've been able to see this put is through three different sources. And then I'll share a couple more after this too. But one being an itch, one an accident, and one an observation. When you think of the itch, this is really the classic entrepreneurial story of seeing a problem out there. Maybe you don't like crust on your sandwiches, for example, or maybe you don't like how we used to roll up car door windows like this, and saying there must be some better way. There must be something else that we can do. And this can be a great source of new ideas in response to really being able to identify a problem or a challenge. An accident, my favorite example here is from Dr. Spencer Silver of 3M, who was actually tasked with developing an incredibly strong adhesive that would last long, not fall off, like be extremely tough over time. And in the process of doing that, he accidentally made something that was the complete opposite of that, where it was a good adhesive and it had some strength to it, but it was actually removable over time. And he shelved that idea, saying, this was not part of the assignment. I basically screwed up. I did the wrong thing. And then after some further reflection and time away, realized that it could have a different type of application. And that became the post-it note. And that's how that was invented ultimately. Another area that ideas can come from is from observation and interaction with nature and just the natural world and how things are. There was a man named George de Mestral who was going through a hike in the Swiss Alps with his dog, and those little cockle burrs, the little brown spiky balls, got stuck to his boot and to his dog. And instead of being like any of us and kind of flicking it off and moving on, he brought it home and really studied and observed, how is this happening? How is this sticking to my boot? And ended up inventing Velcro from that discovery. The principles of AI and compassion, I think, are also really relevant when it comes to generating new ideas. You guys have probably seen this in sort of the tee up around the conference itself, but the concept of ma, or that vital space between elements and the pause that gives meaning and allows for reflection, as well as wa, or the principle of harmony and peaceful unity, where diverse elements come together in balance. I think these are two really good principles that can also be idea generators in a way. If we think of Ma, that's very much connected to the accident in the observation story. The accident wouldn't have become a success if there wasn't time away from it to reflect on how that mistake could maybe be repurposed or reused. And then core to observation is really engaging and reflecting about the natural world and how it works and how what we can potentially learn from that as well. One of my favorite quotes that Ma also reminds me of is, I don't know who discovered water, but it wasn't the fish. And this is from Marshall McLuhan, a media theorist, amongst many other things. But really, what it's getting at is the more that you are really close to something and sort of siloed and shielded amongst other things, the more likely the most obvious solutions or answers are to kind of blow past you. And so it really speaks to the importance of fresh perspectives as well. And then with Wa, or again, this principle of harmony and peaceful unity where diverse elements come together in balance, I think there's a few things we can learn from that for our own human ideation in this AI era. And that is to continue to engage multiple perspectives when you're trying to approach a challenge or a problem. Diversify your interests in knowledge. That's something that I'll come back to, of how important that is for triggering inspiration and ideas over time. And then I think most importantly, and one of my favorite things to do, is seeking the connections between things and seeing where that harmony is or where that balance is as well. But, even with all of these examples, new ideas can often just feel like a spark that just kind of happens or comes out of nowhere. Maybe we're getting into the shower or driving in our car and going to bed and something kind of hits us. And I've been interested in a while in how is that spark actually happening? What is really causing that? And I've found from my experience that more often than not, it's something called forced association, which actually ChatGPT does incredibly well in terms of bringing together two or more, maybe somewhat related things, maybe different things together to see what that could create in terms of a new concept. And I wanted to kind of give an example of this by letting you know about a time that I went for a walk in Pasadena. I was studying at the Art Center College of Design there, and it came time to submit what my MFA thesis would be. And at the time, I knew I was interested in creating frameworks for ideation, especially around developing concepts for startups or businesses. But I didn't know what I would do about it. And so my advisor said, maybe, well, he didn't literally say, but maybe I need some of that ma, or that intentional pause between things, and I should just go for a walk. And I went on a walk, but along the way, I created a game for myself, and that was to walk 100 steps and take note of the first non-living thing that I saw. And this would be the product of my new business that I was about to invent on this walk. Walk another 100 steps, take note of the first living thing that I saw, and this would be my target market for my business. Walk another 100 steps, take note of the location that I was in, and this would be sort of the location or industry for my business. And so in doing this walk, I was able to generate a concept that is admittedly not a very good idea, but it's the concept of park benches for dogs who are waiting for their owners to come back from a train ride at a railroad station. And so this, of course, wasn't a billion-dollar idea, But because I took it seriously and I really took the time to observe and try to form these connections, it ended up getting me onto a path where I was removed from that kind of creative block that I was feeling and was able to challenge my old ideas to compete as well. So trying this together, I think it'd be interesting if you're watching in person or online to do a little bit of mental math with me for a second. We had a pre-conference for AI and compassion earlier in the week, and we discussed each of the different principles of the AI and compassion group, and ultimately got a lot of really good input and words that helped to kind of bring to life some of the core principles. When we asked what should we teach to the next generation to enhance AI literacy and eco-social awareness, we got all kinds of great responses like privacy, being a part of nature, responsibility with AI, intellectual property, and more. And then when we asked what kinds of problems could we address with the new AI-driven business models, also got a lot of really great input and responses. You can see mental health and just irresponsibility being sort of the top ones there. And so to kind of model forced association, again, based on this kind of audience input, we can roll a six-sided die 6 times, and I have one with me, and we can take these two lists, which again represents the input and the words that we got, which you can really categorize into challenges and opportunities. And if I'm stuck and I'm trying to now generate an idea of something to do about what everything we've talked about, I could roll and land on a 1 and a 6 and get mental health and connection to nature. And that's actually a really great combination that goes together quite well. That then can become the springboard for new ideas. Is it that we're going to host yoga retreats in nature? Are we going to actually teach new AI skills and kind of conquer this digital divide, but in a natural setting or in a setting with natural light? That could be really interesting. But again, breaking things down into these lists and then rolling random combinations really models this way of thinking of forced association. But they can be generated in many ways, ideas. My favorite and my go-to is forced association, or again, taking two or more things that may or may not have a lot in common and trying to imagine how they could come together and balance each other. There's also before, during, and after. This is something I love to use with my students where the before really represents the problem that you're trying to solve. The after represents the impact you're trying to create. And then you ideate around the during. How could we kind of connect those dots? How could we solve this problem in a way that makes this intended impact? Crazy Eights. Some of you may have tried this before. This is really an exercise in time boxing where you have a piece of paper that has 8 different sections on it, and you set a timer for 1 minute, and every minute you generate a different response to whatever prompt you're working on. What's nice is the minute gives urgency. It really kills overthinking and self-censorship and gets you to just put things down on paper and see where that gets you. Probably my favorite is the worst possible idea. I don't know if any of you have ever tried this, but again, when students are stuck, I love to recommend this, where you're giving yourself agency to create something that would fail, or basically an incorrect answer to the prompt that you're working on. Let's say it might be something that is extremely expensive to pull off, or maybe technologically not so feasible, or maybe some aspect of it is not very desirable. Once you do that, you then do the opposite of that. So you come up with a really bad idea, you kind of break that down, and you see how could I flip those negative aspects into positive aspects, and that really can unlock some ideas for you. And again, the ma and wa, going to come right back to that. Having this ability to work across things, find the connections between things, find spaces between things to reflect, and find the tools that work for you to better reflect and understand the connections between things. A lot of what we're talking about here is creativity and ideas, and there's this long-standing myth or kind of discussion of, are you born creative? Is this something that can be taught? Is this something that you can kind of level up yourself? How does that work? And there's lot of science around this, it turns out. A psychologist from UC San Diego, Robert Epstein, did a really interesting study that I'll give you kind of the high level of, that basically proved that there was not any evidence that one person is inherently more creative than another, and also proved that you could teach ideation and you could nurture that within people. He worked with the county of Orange County here in California, where I'm tuning in from. He worked with 74 people over 8 months, doing exercises like what I just described, generating connections between things, doing time boxing, all of these kinds of tools. And in his time with them, he was able to measure a 55% increase in their ability to ideate. And even better than that, because sometimes, a lot of ideas isn't helpful. It's not necessarily about quantity, it's about quality as well. They were able to tie $3.5 million worth of savings to those ideas that were generated in those sessions in particular. And what he took away from this are things that I think all of us can benefit from, again, in this AI era as well. One of those is being able to always capture your new ideas. So having some kind of go-to, whether that's a notebook, pen and paper, or that's some kind of app, these ideas can feel like a spark and they can be very much fleeting, and we don't want to lose those ideas. The second, my favorite, is seek out impossible tasks. The example that he gives is to attempt to make your dog fly using only your eyes. And the spoiler alert on that is that that's not possible. But if you trick your brain a bit by actually really taking it seriously and really trying to creatively imagine how you might pull that off, he argues that it ultimately challenges your old ideas to compete and makes way for new ideas as well. A lot like the walk I went on in Pasadena. Diversify your knowledge. So the ability to learn other frameworks or tools or best practices from other fields and see how those might be transferable to you. And kind of similar, but with some nuance, is to surround yourself with interesting things and people at all times. So doing things like attending this conference even, is something that can ultimately lead to more ideas. The American Psychological Association also shares some helpful things that I think are worth noting. The importance of sleep and rest. I think that that's really worth calling out, especially in the startup culture that we're all sort of nested within. Natural light, I've brought up going out into nature and engaging with the natural world a couple of times now. But there's actually been some studies on the impact of natural light on creativity and it being a very positive impact. Collaboration, both Doug and I are coming from the Iovine and Young Academy where collaboration is really taught and relied upon. And I know we could both see firsthand how much better the ideas and projects are when the kids actually work together on these things. And sometimes, harder to pull off than to say, but happiness and integrating play into the work. There's a reason I use dice whenever I'm working on these things. It really brings the barriers down to being creative and being sort of open to listening to your own intuition as well. The less we fit ourselves into a single box or discipline, the more likely we're able to generate a unique idea. I wanted to throw that up there as well, to kind of echo some of the things throughout the presentation, but also considering the school that we're coming from. This is really one of the founding principles of the Iovine and Young Academy, that we shouldn't teach disciplines in silos. We should work at the intersection of those and again, get inspiration from the way other people do things. So to just kind of have a few concluding thoughts, ideas are all around us. Really, if you think about even looking around your room, breaking that down into lists of things, going out in the world, looking at trends, all of these are starting points for new ideas. It's almost like a junk drawer in your kitchen where you put a little bit of everything. Take the time to engage with what's out there and see how they might connect or inspire something new. Every idea has unintended consequences. That's really important to remember, especially as we're fast moving through a lot of these processes, that we do need that pause time to reflect and think critically of what we're quickly generating, as you often see in these innovation practices. And then finally, that it's about problem solving, but also problem finding. That along the way, we can really embrace making those mistakes or happy accidents and realizing, like maybe the problem I thought that we had isn't the right problem. Maybe I need to kind of recalibrate and start over. That can be one of the expectations that you set with ideation, in particular. And so with that, want to say thank you. Those are some thoughts on ideation in this era of AI. I think again, it's one of the more human things that we can do. So hopefully there was some nuggets in there that you guys can put into practice.
Oh my goodness, Matthew, where have you been all my life? That was fantastic. Really,
Oh,
that was
thank you.
phenomenal. There were more than just a few nuggets in there. And, this is, I really love working with people that that really understand and dive into the design process, and how we really, these ideas, come together. I have so many questions for you. I think we have a couple of minutes, and I'm seeing, I know there's probably a number of questions. Everyone's saying phenomenal presentation.
Thank you.
So Matthew, really quickly though, because I'm going to jump to your business model first because this is so unexpected. It's not what we often see. So your consultancy model itself, this is built on compassion, if you really think about this. So what was the driving force behind giving away half of your work?
Yeah, there was a couple of things. One, when I was in high school, I was skateboarding competitively and I was always at the skate park. And I met a man that was in a wheelchair that was ripping around the park with a bunch of other kids who were in wheelchairs. Went up to
Mhm.
him because this was before YouTube, so it was before you could see cool things whenever you wanted, and thought like I got to introduce myself, I got to learn like what's going on here. And he told me he was the founder of a nonprofit that taught kids in wheelchairs how to participate in extreme sports like skateboarding.
I
And
love
on
it.
the spot, I offered to design some stickers for him to help promote the cause. And that was when I learned what pro bono was and what nonprofits were, and just got hooked on the idea of helping people that help people. And then the other thing I learned when I was a few years into doing pro bono work was how much money nonprofits spend on people like me. And it's an outstanding amount. It's over $8 billion a year that they're spending on marketing and strategy kind of consultants. And I had this thought of, if everybody just agreed not to get paid, could we actually solve the world's problems? And that was like a very naive 19-year-old thought that ended up turning into this business model of committing to balancing pro bono work with paid work. And yeah, that's kind of how we got there.
Oh my God. I really love that. There's a commitment that we have at our group, Imagine, to donate up to 10% of everything that
Awesome.
we do, and sometimes I'm working with VCs, So what I always say is all you have to do is ask. Most of the time people will say, yeah, yeah, I'm in. And so I really love that. And then the other question, I want to make sure because I want to make sure I'm in the right section because I think there's questions, but I don't know if I'm getting the questions. So with anyone on the team, please please send that over to us. We have a couple more minutes, but you know, Matthew, you've been in this world of design and creation, and the magic. of imagination and creativity that is humanity. And I know a lot of us keep hearing, from all the people out in AI, just everyone will be entrepreneurs, and it's your creativity that will be your superpower. And a lot of people in schools, we're not really taught, how to
Yeah.
really dive into our creativity. So, and you've given such great examples and tools. So I have two questions. What for parents of kids, especially now, and there's a lot of amazing people coming through school and universities. We get asked all the time, okay, what do we do? Where should they go? We're hearing reports of certain majors that used to be the touted majors, now 85% aren't finding jobs. So what's your recommendation to the our next generations and to the parents? And then second part is, do you see a world where AI will ever come close to transforming, having that level of imagination?
Yeah.
Two
Well,
questions.
gosh, the first thing for parents, it's something I think about a lot because I'm a father of 5-year-old twins, and I have a lot of thoughts of like what their future might look like. But I know for me, there's certain things that will stand the test of time for humanity. And that I would say is creativity and ingenuity and the ability to see a problem and find a solution. I really
Mm,
think that even though that's something that AI can technically break down to us, it's always breaking it down based on existing examples. And there's going to always be this spark, that I've been kind of chasing that humans will be able to bring to the conversation. And so I think the more that you can teach your kid to understand how to ask really good questions and form their own opinions on things, get involved in their community, all of that would lead to a better world. I really believe in the future of art and really making things by hand, I think is a really compelling space. After the Industrial Revolution, we got the arts and crafts movement that really was pushing back on industrialization and said, hey, we can build a house without screws. We can make it so that this wood just fits together and make these like beautiful, stained glass windows and all this stuff. I think and hope that we're kind of entering a new one of those in the next 10 years. Um, and then and then what was the second part? I lost it.
no worries. Just, the second part is, do you see a world where AI is reaching the level of imagination or that humans have reached, or even, novel concepts? I mean, that's a lot of us debate, is
Yeah.
that where we really reach that, artificial general intelligence and super intelligence? And what are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I can totally see it getting there, to be honest. It's one of those things of just because we can, should we? That I think we really need to think about. Like, what is left for us, right? Like somebody's brought up, I don't want AI to automate my job. I want it to automate me needing to do the dishes. And so, to what extent do we want it to kind of take over these, what I really believe are very human, like things that make us very special as humans? But I think technically it could get there for sure. It might already be there, to be honest.
I will say Pandora's box has definitely been open, but I think as humans, we're always reaching, it's humans behind this, and most
Yeah.
of us are actually creating it. So, we're always reaching, continuing to reach and explore. So I think it's an interesting time. Um, Matthew, if we're out of time, and I'm looking to see if our next speaker is here. I think he's almost joining us because he was texting earlier. So it's Dekai that's joining us next, in case anyone is wondering. But thank you so much, Matthew. Just in general, what I would say is that if we can build with humanity at the center. I mean, it's not about human in the loop, but our compassion and humanity in the center. I think that the future builders of, even all kinds of concepts that we haven't even thought about, perhaps that's what we need to be focusing more on. And so thank you
Yeah,
for reminding us of that, and also giving us such amazing tools. I hope we continue talking down the road.
that
Um,
sounds great. Yeah, no, and thank you again for having me and enjoy the rest of the conference, everybody.